And imagine the late 19th century. Over Russia's endless lands, the freezing Siberian winds are blowing. This is a place far from civilization, where wild nature reigns and legends are born. It was in this gloomy geography that one of history's most mysterious figures was born. January 9th, 1869, Pokrovskoe village. In the cold embrace of Siberia, a baby born in the hut of an ordinary peasant family carried a destiny that no one could yet know. His name was Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin. This name would become a legend that would shake all of Russia, enchant empresses, influence czars, and finally witness the fall of an empire. If Efim Akimovich Rasputin could have foreseen his son Grigori's future, perhaps he would have wished that he had not been born that night. But fate had already been written. Little Grigori was different from other peasant children. In those dull blue eyes, it was as if the knowledge of centuries was hidden. His gaze, from a young age, both disturbed and mesmerized people. Pokrovskoe village was a typical Siberian settlement in the Tumen region. Wooden houses, muddy roads, endless forests, and winters lasting 9 months. This harsh geography created tough characters. Grigori was also a child of this harsh climate, but there was something else in him, an instinct, a mystical perception not found in ordinary people. During his childhood years, Grigori, like other children in the village, worked in the fields, took care of animals, and listened to the tales told by elders on long winter nights. But those tales would take on completely different forms in little Grigori's mind. The village elders had noticed something strange about this child. Sometimes he would stare blankly for minutes, as if listening to distant sounds. Sometimes he would find lost animals, and sometimes he would predict events that had not yet happened. By the time he was 10 years old, Grigori was known in the village as the strange child. His family was Orthodox Christian, and Grigori also went to church from a young age and bowed before icons. But there was also something different about his devoutness. While other children got bored during worship, Grigori would pray as if in a trance. His eyes closed, incomprehensible whispers on his lips. When he stepped into youth, however, Grigori became the village's troublemaker. He drank alcohol, fought, and chased after women. This is why the nickname Rasputin meant dissolute, immoral. But even amidst these wild behaviors, there was a mystical attraction about him. Women would swirl around him like moths to a flame, while men were wary of this mysterious young man's power. During Siberia's harsh winters, throughout long nights, Grigori embarked on a quest to find himself. He would travel kilometers away from the village, walk for hours in the forests, and meditate in the freezing cold. These moments of solitude were the beginning of his spiritual transformation. Because Grigori Rasputin felt that he would not be an ordinary Siberian peasant, there was a power growing within him, but he did not yet fully understand what this power was.
In his 20s, he married, had children, but the restlessness within him had grown even stronger. The family life he established with Praskovia Fyodorovna did not satisfy him.
In his soul, there was a different search, a different calling. That calling would take him from the cold lands of Siberia to St. Petersburg, the heart of the world's most powerful empire.
But the time had not yet come.
He was still just a young man, known only as strange in his village.
No one yet knew that he would one day influence the Tsar's family and change Russia's destiny.
He was still just Grigori, a child of Siberia, a man with a mysterious gaze, harboring storms within.
Because what Grigori was seeking was different from traditional piety. He was looking for ways to reach God more directly, more intimately. And this quest introduced him to secret sects living on the fringes of the Russian Orthodox Church.
His encounter with the Klisti sect was a turning point in his life. This sect differed radically from traditional church teachings. According to them, the path to God passed through sin. The principle, you cannot repent without sinning, nor be saved without repenting, was the fundamental philosophy of the sect. Klisti ceremonies were completely different from ordinary worship. Music, dancing, wild spinning. Participants would dance until they lost themselves, entering a trance. They believed that in these moments, their souls left their bodies and reached God. When Grigori began participating in these ceremonies, he started to feel a great change within himself. But the real transformation came with his discovery of his healer abilities. During Klisti ceremonies, when he placed his hands on the sick, signs of healing began to appear in them. Initially, this surprised both himself and those around him. But over time, Grigori became aware of this ability and focused on developing it. Rasputin's supernatural intuitions began to manifest especially during his adolescent years. On one occasion, he had predicted weeks in advance the death of an elderly man in the village. He had said, "Father Dmitri will be laid to rest in Christian's house on the 15th of the month, 3 weeks from now at morning prayer time." No one had believed him, but everything happened as he had said. Such events caused Rasputin to become both a respected and feared figure in the village. In another incident, Rasputin's father, Yefim, was preparing to sow his field. Young Grigori warned, "Father, if you sow this week, it will rain next week. The seeds will rot." His father had not heeded this warning and continued to sow his field. A week later, unexpectedly, heavy rains began in the middle of summer, and all of Yefim's seeds had rotted. After this incident, even Rasputin's family began to take his extraordinary abilities seriously. Lastly, the development of Rasputin's ability to see the future holds an important place in his childhood. He noticed that the images he saw in his dreams tended to come true. On one occasion, he had seen in a dream that the village would burn and had warned everyone the next day. Initially, no one believed him, But that evening, an unexpected fire broke out and half the village burned down. After this incident, the villagers began to take Rasputin's prophecies seriously. The aristocratic circles of St. Petersburg had a great interest in mysticism at that time. Led by Empress Alexandra Feodorovna, the court environment was seeking hope from spiritualist sessions, fortune-tellers, and soothsayers. This environment was an ideal ground for someone with mystical abilities like Rasputin. Empress Alexandra was experiencing deep anxiety, especially due to her son Alexei's health condition. Alexei, born in 1904, was the meaning of his parents' lives, but also their greatest concern. Because little Alexei suffered from hemophilia, a fatal blood disease. Hemophilia was a fatal disease with no known treatment at that time. Even the slightest blow could endanger Alexei's life. Empress Alexandra had nearly gone mad with this worry. Every breath of her son was a miracle to her, and she was ready to resort to any means to sustain this miracle. The Empress's inner circle spoke of Rasputin. This mystic Siberian peasant was said to have extraordinary abilities in healing illnesses. Initially, the Empress hesitated, but her son's condition was worsening day by day. The first meeting took place in the private quarters of the palace. When Empress Alexandra saw Rasputin, she was initially surprised. The man standing before her was very different from the holy man she had imagined. With his long, messy hair, ordinary peasant clothes, and those piercing eyes. But when Rasputin began to speak, the Empress's doubts quickly dissipated. "Your Majesty," Rasputin had said with his deep, magical voice, "God gave me this gift so that I can bring healing to those who suffer. Your son is not just a little prince, he is the hope of the Russian people, and I am here to protect this hope." These words had touched the Empress's heart. Rasputin's first encounter with Alexei, however, became a legendary event. Little Alexei was having another bleeding crisis. The doctors were helpless. The Empress was in tears. When Rasputin entered the child's room, a deep silence fell. He placed his hands on the child's forehead, closing his eyes and praying for a long time. Everyone in the room held their breath, watching this mystical ritual. And something incredible happened. Alexei's breathing began to improve. His pain decreased. Within a few hours, the bleeding stopped and the child returned to normal. This event solidified Rasputin's position in the palace. Empress Alexandra now believed that he was not just a healer, but also a savior sent by God. Tsar Nicholas II, although initially skeptical, could not ignore his positive effect on his son's health. Rasputin's healing power was particularly effective for nervous disorders and psychological problems. On one occasion, a noblewoman living in St. Petersburg was suffering from severe depression. The doctors had not been able to cure her. Rasputin went to the woman's house and spoke with her for about an hour. When the woman was hypnotized by Rasputin's words, all her fears and anxieties disappeared. A few days later, the woman was completely healed. Rasputin's hypnotic abilities were used not only for healing, but also to influence and direct people. He had a great influence, especially on people in high positions. Those who spoke with him felt as if they were enchanted. Using this ability, Rasputin managed to bring many important people
including the Tsar's family, under his influence.
A diplomat living in St. Petersburg writes in his memoirs, "I met Rasputin once. When he entered the room, he drew all our attention. His eyes seemed to penetrate into us. When he began to speak, his words echoed in my mind. When he looked at me, I felt that he knew all my secrets. From that moment on, I could not escape his influence. When he told me what I needed to do, I could not object." The claims of mind control regarding Rasputin were one of his most controversial aspects. According to some, Rasputin not only hypnotized people, but also could control their thoughts and behaviors. His influence on the Tsar's family in particular strengthened these claims. On one occasion, Rasputin had a meeting with Tsar Nicholas. After the meeting, the Tsar was completely changed. He began to hesitate, even on issues he had previously been decisive about. Court members thought the Tsar was under Rasputin's influence. But the Tsar, rejecting these claims, would say, "Rasputin is only showing me the right way." From 1906 onwards, Rasputin became a regular guest at the palace. He began to serve not only during Alexei's health crises, but also as the family's spiritual advisor. The Empress called him Father, spiritual father, and shared even her most secret thoughts with him. The miraculous healings of little Alexei were increasing Rasputin's influence in the palace day by day. Empress Alexandra was no longer making any important decision without consulting Rasputin. The appointment of ministers, the determination of military strategies, and even foreign policy decisions were all passing through this mysterious man's approval. Rasputin's influence was not limited to the political sphere only. He had also become the center of social life in St. Petersburg. The meetings he held in his apartment brought together the most important politicians, businessmen, and aristocrats of the period. The decisions made at these meetings were sometimes more effective than the decisions of the Council of Ministers. The incident in 1912 became the most dramatic example of Rasputin's healing power. Little Alexei suffered internal bleeding after falling during a hunt. The doctors announced that the situation was very serious and the child's life was in danger. In desperation, Empress Alexandra asked Rasputin for help. Rasputin was in Siberia at that time, but upon receiving the telegram, he immediately returned to St. Petersburg. When he came to Alexei's bedside, the child was almost in a coma. He kept his hands on the child for hours and prayed. When morning came, Alexei opened his eyes. His fever had dropped and the bleeding had stopped. This incident brought the rumors about Rasputin to their peak. He was now seen not just as a healer, but as someone who could ward off death and possessed supernatural powers. On the other hand, in the cafes of St. Petersburg, nobles were gathering and sharing the latest gossip about Rasputin and the Empress. While some argued that this relationship was purely spiritual, others claimed it was a more worldly relationship. The Empress's blind trust in Rasputin and the long hours she spent with him further fueled these speculations. One day, at a party held at the home of one of the most influential nobles in the palace, Guess we're talking about Rasputin and the Empress. A writer attending the party was noting down these conversations. "The Empress is completely surrendered to Rasputin," said one noble. "She believes every word he says and follows every piece of his advice. This is not just a spiritual connection, but also a kind of hypnotic effect." "I think this relationship is not just spiritual," said another. "The Empress feels an emotional bond toward Rasputin, perhaps love. But of course, no one can say this openly." Among the common people, even more fantastic stories were circulating. Some claimed that Rasputin had bewitched the Empress and took control of her. Others even said that the two had secretly married, and that Rasputin was the real father of the Tsar. Such rumors further solidified Rasputin's mysterious and powerful image in the minds of the people. The newspapers were further fueling these rumors. Particularly, opposition newspapers were putting the relationship between Rasputin and the Empress on their headlines, trying to smear them. While one newspaper ran the headline, "The Empress and the Siberian Mystic, Love or Betrayal," another wrote, "The Tsarina is sacrificing herself to Rasputin's love." Rasputin was quite pleased with these rumors. For him, these rumors increased his power and influence. He wanted people to fear and respect him, and these rumors served exactly that purpose. The rumors circulating among the people and in the palace made the relationship between Rasputin and the Empress even more mysterious. As people tried to understand the nature of this relationship, the bond between the two deepened even more. While Alexandra was increasing her trust and loyalty to Rasputin day by day, Rasputin was using this situation to his advantage. One of Rasputin's most famous prophecies was about World War I. In 1914, when the war was about to begin, Rasputin told the Tsar, "This war will be the end of Russia. Millions of people will die. The throne will be shaken." But the Tsar did not refrain from entering the war. The war happened just as Rasputin had said. Millions of Russian soldiers died. The country's economy collapsed, and the Tsarist regime was shaken. Another of Rasputin's famous prophecies was a prediction he made in 1905. At that time, revolutionary movements were gaining strength in Russia. Rasputin warned Tsar Nicholas, "If you don't listen to the voice of the people, you will lose your throne." But the Tsar did not heed this warning. In 1905, a great revolution occurred in Russia, and the Tsarist rule was overthrown. The war caused public opinion against Rasputin to grow even stronger. The people held Rasputin responsible for the defeats at the front, economic difficulties, and the general situation of the country. On the streets of St. Petersburg, they were whispering, "When this devil is expelled from the palace, then our country will be saved." The press also launched an intense campaign against Rasputin. Every day, new scandals about him were published in newspapers. Expressions in newspapers such as "the devil who has infested the palace," "the charlatan leading the country to disaster," were fueling the people's hatred of Rasputin. The aristocrats, however, had now begun to openly protest Rasputin. Many people around the palace believed that his influence over the imperial family was leading the country to disaster. Even Grand Duchess Elizabeth Feodorovna tried to warn her sister, Empress Alexandra. This man will destroy you and your family. Remove him from the palace, or our end will be catastrophic.
But the Empress was rejecting all warnings. According to her, Rasputin was the guarantee of her son Alexei's survival. She wrote to her husband, "They don't understand, Father. He is an angel sent to us by God. If we lose him, we will lose Alexei too." Defeats were coming one after another at the front. Millions of soldiers had died, been wounded, or captured. The economy had collapsed, and the people had begun to suffer from hunger. Rasputin was being held responsible for all these disasters.
In this atmosphere, assassination plans against Rasputin also began to take shape. The first serious attempt occurred in early 1916. Former nun Guseva tried to wound Rasputin with a knife. Rasputin, who was seriously injured in this attack, remained in the hospital for months. But this incident did not stop him. In fact, it strengthened him even more. During this period, his mystical side also became more pronounced. He began to claim that he could see the future and received messages from God in his dreams. In the letters he wrote to the Empress, he made prophecies about Russia's future. "They will try to kill me," he had warned the Empress. "But if they kill me, it will be the end of this country, because if I die, you will die too, all of you." Rasputin's death would indeed be the beginning of the end of the Romanov dynasty and Tsarist Russia.
These prophecies frightened the Empress even more and increased her devotion to Rasputin. According to her, Rasputin was like an angel who protected not only her son, but the entire family.
On the night of December 16, 1916, a cold winter night in St. Petersburg, while the city was silent with the gloom brought by the war, Prince Felix Yusupov was preparing for an unprecedented assassination in history. The final hours of Grigori Rasputin's life were about to begin. Prince Yusupov had meticulously prepared his plan. He would invite Rasputin to his palace, telling him he would introduce him to his wife, Irina Yusupova. This pretext was to take advantage of one of Rasputin's weaknesses, his fondness for women, because Princess Irina was one of the most beautiful women of the period.
In the assassination plot, alongside Yusupov, were Vladimir Purishkevich, Dr. Stanislav Lazarevich, and the son of the Grand Duchess, Dmitry Pavlovich. After poisoning and killing Rasputin, they would throw his body into the Neva River. Around 11 p.m. that evening, Yusupov went to Rasputin's apartment. Rasputin was in a strange state of uneasiness that evening. It was as if his instincts were signaling him of danger. But the opportunity to meet Princess Irina overcame this uneasiness. Rasputin put on his best clothes. That night he had carefully prepared, wearing perfume and combing his hair.
When they arrived at Yusupov Palace, Yusupov took Rasputin to a special room in the basement. The room appeared to be prepared for a romantic meeting. Carpets, comfortable chairs, dim lighting, but a deadly poison, cyanide, had been mixed into the pastries and wine glasses on the table. Rasputin was hungry and began eating the poisoned food at Yusupov's insistence. The conspirators were waiting upstairs for Rasputin to die. Despite hours passing, Rasputin was still standing. Yusupov was shocked by this situation. Rasputin was talking and walking normally. The poison had no effect on him at all. Panicking, Yusupov went upstairs to talk with the other conspirators. Dr. Lazovert said that the poison was definitely a lethal dose, enough to kill even an elephant. But Rasputin was still alive. The backup plan had to be put into action. Yusupov took his gun and went back downstairs. Rasputin had turned his back and was examining the figure of Jesus on the wall. The moment Rasputin turned around, Yusupov pulled the trigger. The bullet entered Rasputin's chest. He fell to the ground, screaming. Blood began to stain the carpet. "Finally!" shouted Yusupov triumphantly. He ran upstairs to inform the others. The conspirators came downstairs to see Rasputin's body. But a few minutes later, something incredible happened. Rasputin opened his eyes and tried to get up. He was wounded, but not dead. He even tried to attack Yusupov. Rasputin tried with all his strength to climb the stairs. He crawled toward the palace garden. "Help me," he shouted. "They're trying to kill me." Purishkevich took out his gun and fired several shots at Rasputin. This time, Rasputin remained motionless. But the conspirators were still not sure. They approached the body to see if Rasputin was dead. Yusupov checked Rasputin's pulse. There was no heartbeat. He wasn't breathing. "He's really dead this time," he said. But to be sure, they beat Rasputin. They wrapped his body in a carpet, took it by car to the Neva River, found an opening in the ice-covered river, and threw the body into the water. The autopsy results were shocking. Cyanide was found in Rasputin's body, but he hadn't died from poisoning. He had bullet wounds in his chest and head, but the actual cause of death was drowning. This meant he was still alive when thrown into the river. The cause of death further grew the Rasputin legend. A normal person couldn't endure so much torture, the people said. This man truly had supernatural powers. Empress Alexandra nearly went mad with Rasputin's death. "They killed father," she cried. "Now we are all dead. Who will protect Alexei? Who will protect us?" Indeed, everything happened very quickly after Rasputin's death. 3 months later, the February Revolution broke out. Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate. A year later, the October Revolution took place, and the Bolsheviks came to power. After Rasputin's body was found in the icy waters of the Neva, Empress Alexandra requested that he be buried with a special ceremony. A grave was dug in Tsar Alexander Park, in the imperial family's private section. The Empress, her sons, and daughters attended the funeral ceremony. This special ceremony was the final indication of Rasputin's acceptance by the palace. However, after the February Revolution, the people's anger was directed even at the deceased Rasputin. His grave was opened, his body was exhumed and burned, his ashes were scattered to the wind. They wanted his physical existence to be completely destroyed. During the Soviet period, Rasputin was officially regarded as an enemy of the people. Communist propaganda presented him as a symbol of the corruption of the Tsarist regime. But among the people, the stories about him never ended. In secretly told legends, Rasputin was sometimes depicted as the devil and sometimes as a saint. But the real question was, did Rasputin really have supernatural powers, or was this an illusion?
Modern medicine tried to explain his ability to heal Alexei. Hemophilia experts suggested that Rasputin's hypnotic effect reduced the child's stress, which in turn stopped the bleeding, because stress was one of the factors that increased bleeding in hemophilia patients. But these explanations did not account for Rasputin's other miraculous healings. It was rumored that during that period, countless patients were touched by his hands.
Parapsychology experts, however, put forward different theories. According to them, Rasputin indeed had paranormal abilities, such as telepathy and telekinesis. These abilities had been strengthened by the mystical practices he had developed since his childhood.
In 2004, the Russian Orthodox Church discussed the issue of declaring Rasputin a saint. This proposal caused great controversy and was ultimately rejected. But even this discussion showed that his influence on the Russian people was still continuing.
But what is indisputable is this. Grigori Rasputin has taken his place as one of the most mysterious figures in history. He was one of those rare people who witnessed the fall of an empire, brought the end of a dynasty, and became a legend even with his own death.
People did not understand me. I am neither a saint nor a devil. I am just Grigori, a person trying to live in this world with the gifts God has given me.